They called me a pathetic boy. My own father, no less. It wasn't even the worst thing he said to me, but it was the one that stuck. Not because it hurt the most, but because it defined the way he saw me. The way he'd always seen me. And no matter what I built, how far I climbed, that one label echoed louder than any applause I'd earned. But this isn't a story about proving someone wrong. Not really. This is about what happens when you realize that the person you're fighting to impress will never clap for you. My name is Joshua Langford. I was 23 when everything changed. But it started long before that. I come from Charleston, South Carolina, a place where success wears a different uniform. Around here, success means dirty fingernails and sun-scorched skin. It means labor you can see with your eyes, not lines of code on a screen. My dad, Nathan Langford, ran a landscaping company for 3 decades. Built it from a single pickup truck into a modest fleet of 20. By local standards, he was a king, but even kings fear being dethroned. When I told him I wanted to study finance instead of joining the family business, his silence said more than words ever could. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked at me like I was an idiot and walked away. I still remember the way the door clicked shut behind him, soft and final, like a chapter closing, like a coffin lid. I was 17 when I made that decision. Young, sure. But I knew what I wanted: to understand money, to master it. Not for greed, not for status, but because I'd watched my dad fight too many battles he didn't need to fight. I wanted to build something that didn't depend on weather or gas prices or aching backs. I wanted freedom. He thought I was choosing fantasy over family. You never had a head for success, he told me. I had just been named one of the youngest startup founders on Wall Street. My face was in Forbes. My name was trending. But all he saw was a boy who didn't know what real work looked like. He never asked what I built. But I'll tell you, it was an algorithm. One I developed in my sophomore year at the University of South Carolina. It could predict market trends with alarming accuracy, using a blend of sentiment analysis and historical behavior. I knew it had potential the first time I tested it against the real market and beat every traditional model by a full percentage point. My professor called it revolutionary. I called it a start. I dropped out the next semester to build it full-time. My mom cried. My dad hung up the phone before I finished my sentence. 2 years passed. I lived off ramen and cold coffee. I worked from a tiny apartment with 2 roommates who believed in me more than anyone else in my bloodline. I pitched the algorithm to anyone who would listen. Most investors didn't. Too young. Too green. Too ambitious. I kept every rejection letter. Printed them out, taped them to my wall. Not as motivation, as memory, a reminder of who didn't believe in me. Meanwhile, back home, my dad still thought I was playing games. Still introduced me to clients as my son who's figuring things out. At Christmas, he suggested I take a manager role at the company. That computer thing isn't working out, huh? He smiled when he said it. That smile people wear when they think they're being helpful. But what they really mean is I was right all along. Then came the email. From Blackwater Capital. One of the biggest hedge funds on the East Coast. They wanted to license my tech. Exclusively. $14 million. I stared at the screen, numb. Read it 17 times. Called my roommate Thomas. He screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away. I called my mom next. She cried again, but this time they were happy tears. I didn't call my dad. Instead, I drove to New York, signed the papers, and had dinner with Blackwater executives in a restaurant so upscale the menu didn't have prices. Patricia Donovan, the CEO, toasted to the future of finance. I smiled, but in my head, I heard one voice. Pathetic boy, you never had a head for success. 3 days later, I walked into a Ferrari dealership in jeans and a t-shirt. Drove out in Aroma. Red, of course. I didn't want a Ferrari. I wanted a message. The timing was perfect. My father's Memorial Day barbecue. His crown jewel event. All his clients, employees, friends, gathered in one backyard to celebrate his empire. I didn't call ahead. I pulled up at 2 p.m. sharp. The engine rumbled like thunder as I rolled into the driveway, parking beside the same truck my dad had driven for 20 years. People turned. Conversations stopped. Eyes locked onto the car, then onto me. Sorry I'm late, I said, stepping into the backyard. Traffic from New York was a nightmare. My father looked up from the grill, spatula mid-flip. His smile was tight, practiced. Look who decided to show up, he said. Whose car did you borrow for the entrance? Laughter. It's mine, I said. Bought it yesterday. He didn't believe me. Not really. But I handed him the title anyway. His expression flickered. Just for a moment. Then he folded it and handed it back. Must be nice to have rich friends, he muttered. Grab a plate. Your mom made potato salad. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to talk to him. Really talk. Every time I brought up the deal, the company, the algorithm, he changed the subject. Landscaping, weather, football. Anything but what I'd built. By the end of the night, he still hadn't acknowledged it. Not the money. Not the Ferrari. Not me. That's when I realized. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about fear. And fear? Fear makes people dangerous. When the last guest had trickled out and the backyard was quiet again, I found him in his office. The room looked exactly how it always had. Papers stacked in careful chaos. A wall full of framed certifications and photos of his business milestones. One picture stood out. My father, barely 20, standing beside his first truck, grinning like he'd just bought his ticket to the American dream. He didn't look up when I stepped inside. We need to talk, I said. He scribbled something on a form and didn't lift his head. Nothing to talk about. $14 million isn't nothing. He paused, pen in midair, then set it down. Slowly, he raised his eyes to mine. You know what built this family? He asked. 40 years of breaking my back. Not some button mashing on a laptop. There it was again. That quiet, insistent dismissal. Like every bit of what I had done was illusion. A trick. Smoke and mirrors. What I built is real too, I said. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, voice low. Let me tell you something, Joshua. I've seen guys like you before. Flash in the pan success. Wall Street eats people like you. You'll blow through that money in a year and then what? You'll come back here, begging for a job, and I'll have to explain why my son couldn't hack it in the real world. I didn't say a word, just turned and left. In the kitchen, my mom was doing dishes, her back to me. She turned when she heard my steps. He's proud of you, she said softly. He just doesn't know how to show it. I shook my head. No, Mom. He's not proud. He's threatened. The next morning, I got a text from Evan, my cousin. The only family member who had ever shown genuine interest in what I was building. Uncle Nathan is telling everyone your deal fell through. Says you lied about everything. That you rented the Ferrari to impress people. I stared at the screen. Not with anger, but with a cold, steady certainty. This wasn't going away. In the days that followed, the whispers grew louder. Patricia Donovan from Blackwater even called me herself. Someone claiming to be your father contacted our office. Asked for details about the licensing agreement. We didn't give him anything, of course. Just thought you should know. I thanked her, trying not to let the heat in my chest show in my voice. I drove to my parents' house on a Tuesday, knowing my dad would be at work. My mother let me in, her eyes cautious. As she made coffee, her movements were jittery. Too quick. What's going on with him, Mom? She sat down at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. He's worried. That's all. Worried enough to call my business partners? To tell people I made it all up. She looked down. You have to understand, Josh, your success, it challenges everything he built. Everything he is. That's not my problem. No, she agreed. But he's making it yours. She hesitated, then added, the business is struggling, has been for years. The big landscaping chains are undercutting his contracts. He can't compete. The weight of her words settled hard. Why didn't he tell me? Pride, she said simply. The same pride that stops him from celebrating you. In his mind, if your way worked, it means his way failed. That evening, I called Uncle Frank, my father's younger brother and business partner. We met at a bar downtown. He stared into his beer before speaking. 3 years ago, he remortgaged the house, poured it all into the business. New trucks, new equipment, trying to keep up. But it's not working. Why are you telling me this? Frank looked at me, his voice low. Because yesterday he asked if I thought you'd invest in the company. He's planning to ask you. I exhaled slowly. So he doesn't believe my success is real, but he wants my money. He believes it's real, Frank said. He just can't admit it. Later that night, I drove past my father's office. The lights were still on. I parked across the street and watched him through the window, hunched over paperwork, same as he'd done for decades. For the first time, I didn't see a tyrant. I didn't see the man who dismissed me. I saw someone clinging to a world that didn't exist anymore, fighting battles he couldn't win, carrying the burden of a legacy that was slipping through his fingers. And I realized his attacks on me weren't about resentment. They were about survival. If my way was valid, his way was obsolete. If I succeeded, it meant the world no longer needed men like him. The next morning, I got the text. Need to discuss business opportunity. Dinner tomorrow. 7 p.m. I replied with one word. Yes. But I had no intention of going. Instead, I spent the next 48 hours setting something else in motion. Something that would change everything. I didn't show up for dinner. Not because I was avoiding him, but because I had work to do, real work, the kind my father never could understand. I wasn't going to argue with him over pot roast and pride. I was going to act. That morning, I called Patricia Donovan. I need intel, I said, specifically on landscaping companies in the Charleston area. Acquisition targets. Expansion plans. There was a pause. Joshua, what are you planning? A way to save a legacy that refuses to be saved. By noon, I had a list of the top 3 players in the region. By 3 p.m., I had meetings scheduled with 2 of them. One call stood out more than the rest. Harold Jenkins, owner of Greenscape Enterprises, the largest and fastest-growing landscaping company in the state. We've had our eye on Langford Landscaping for a while, he admitted after I explained my interest. Prime service area. Loyal customer base. But Nathan won't even take my calls. What if I could change that? By the end of the meeting, I had an offer in writing. $1.2 million for my father's company. Nearly double what it was worth on paper. A 5-year employment contract for Nathan Langford as regional manager. Employees retained. Benefits improved. Legacy intact. It wasn't charity. It was strategy. Next, I called a commercial real estate agent. I'm looking for warehouse space, I told her. 15,000 square feet minimum. Charleston's old industrial district. I'm building a tech incubator. By the end of the day, I had a lease signed. Horizon Analytics, my company, was coming home. The final piece was Evan, my cousin. Business degree fresh in hand. Loyal to a fault. I want you to be my COO, I told him. He blinked. Are you serious? I've never run anything. Neither had I replied. But you believe in what we're building. That's what matters. 3 days passed. My father's messages got angrier, shorter, more impatient. Then I walked into his office, unannounced. He looked up, surprised, and instantly irritated. So you decided to grace me with your presence. After standing me up, I placed a folder on his desk. This is more important than dinner. He flipped it open. Read the first page. His face tightened. What is this? Your big investment in my company. No, that's an acquisition offer. From Greenscape. He froze. You went behind my back? I went ahead of you, I said. The business is failing, Dad. You know it. This offer keeps your name alive, your employees working, and gives you a seat at the table. You get to stay on as a regional manager with profit sharing. His voice rose. So that's your plan? Sweep in with your Wall Street money and take over what I built? No, this saves what you built. He stood, trembling with fury. Get out. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a key, set it on his desk. This is for you. He stared at it. What is it? The key to the Ferrari. It's yours. Consider it a gift. Suspicion narrowed his eyes. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, I said, walking toward the door. It's an advance. The Greenscape offer expires in 48 hours. After that, they approach your competitors. Think about your employees. Think about Mom. I didn't wait for a response. The next morning, I got a text from my mom. He drove the car this morning. Didn't say a word about it. But he drove it. By evening, Harold Jenkins confirmed it. My father called him. 24 hours later, a deal was in principle. I didn't attend the signing. I watched from a distance as my father signed away the business he had built for 40 years. He looked smaller at that table. But when he walked out, keys in pocket, his shoulders were straight. 2 months later, we launched Horizon Analytics. The headquarters, a newly renovated warehouse in Charleston, packed with fresh graduates, eager minds, and a mission. That day, I stood on a makeshift stage, my father at the back of the room, arms crossed. Our mission, I said, is to make financial technology accessible to everyone, not just Wall Street. And we're proud to be doing it right here. Applause. We're also announcing our first local partnership. Horizon is investing $2 million in Greenscape Regional Holdings, the parent company of several landscaping firms, including the former Langford Landscaping. Gasps. Then silence. I looked at my father. Nathan Langford will be leading our new initiative as Director of Traditional Industries. Applause thundered through the room. His eyes met mine. No smile. Just recognition. Builder to builder. The applause didn't matter. What mattered was the look in his eyes. Not pride, not affection, but something else. A flicker of recognition, like two soldiers spotting each other across a battlefield, realizing they'd both made it out alive. There was no hug, no handshake, just a nod. And in that nod was everything he had never said. After the presentation, people swarmed me. Journalists, local officials, business leaders shaking my hand and asking about Horizon's vision. But my eyes kept drifting to the back of the room where he stood, stoic, arms crossed. Eventually, the crowd thinned, and he walked up. "You planned this," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I planned to build something that matters," I replied. The rest fell into place. He glanced around the buzzing room. Employees in Horizon t-shirts typing on tablets. Startup energy pulsing through every corner of the new headquarters. Then, to the sign behind the stage, Horizon Analytics. No Langford name anywhere. "Your name's not on the building," he said. "Neither was yours," I told him. "But everyone knew who built it." He held out his hand. I took it. "The Ferrari stays with you," I said. "Consider it a signing bonus." A faint smile cracked across his face. "Already sold it," he said. "Bought a new truck instead. Put the rest in your company's stock." That was his way of saying, "I believe in you." 6 months later, we sat side by side in my office overlooking the Cooper River. On the wall behind us was a framed article from the Charleston Business Journal. Local tech firm partners with traditional industries, creating 150 new jobs. We weren't close, not like some fathers and sons are. But every Thursday he came to lunch. Brought updates on the Traditional Industries program. Told me about the electricians, the plumbers, the small-town owners he was now mentoring through tech transitions. "They don't need handouts," he said. Eyes clear, voice steady. "They need tools that make sense for them." I listened, really listened, because he was right. The Greenscape partnership flourished. Our tech tools gave old businesses new life. Scheduling apps for service workers. Financial platforms that understood seasonal work. Logistics systems built for humans, not just machines. His old employees had stock options now. Benefits. Stability. My mom retired. Traveled. Took a cooking class in Italy. "Can you believe it?" she said, laughing over a video call. "Your father made pasta from scratch." Thomas joined Horizon as marketing director. Evan proved himself as COO. We hired 30 graduates from nearby schools. Charleston no longer had to ship its best talent north. One day, walking through the office, I passed the wall where we displayed Horizon's core values. At the bottom was a new addition suggested by my father. "Remember whose shoulders you stand on." It hit me harder than I expected. I used to think success meant proving him wrong, that I had to win against him. Now I know different. Real success? It meant building something so strong it could carry both of us. Past and future. Sweat and strategy. Calloused hands and algorithms. I got my revenge. But not with a Ferrari. With a future that made room for his past. We were no longer opponents. Not rivals across a generation gap. We were co-architects of something larger than either of us could have built alone. I finally understood why the conflict between us had burned so long. Because we were too alike. Builders. Stubborn. Obsessed with control. We just used different tools. Still, even after everything, our conversations rarely touched the personal. We talked shop. Strategy. Numbers. New hires. Growth metrics. The real stuff stayed buried beneath those surface-level updates. But every now and then, I caught a glimpse. Comment here. A nod there. And that was enough. Until one afternoon. We were sitting in the break room, an old-school diner booth we'd installed to remind everyone where we came from. He stirred his coffee, silent. I was scrolling through market reports. You know, he said suddenly. I thought I was building something for you. I looked up. The business, he continued. Langford Landscaping. I always figured one day you'd take it over. Put your own stamp on it. Make it yours. That was the plan. I didn't know what to say. When you chose finance, I felt like I'd failed. Like everything I built wasn't good enough for my own son. It wasn't about good enough, Dad, I said. It was about different. I needed to build something that was mine. He nodded slowly. I see that now. Took me a while. Silence settled between us. Not heavy this time. Just real. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a check. Personal investment. A modest sum compared to Blackwater, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the name on the signature line. For the first time in my life, my father was investing in me. You believe in Horizon now? I believe in you. Always did. Just didn't know how to say it. The next day, he gave a talk to our newest interns. Half of them didn't know his full story, just that he was some retired landscaper we kept around for nostalgia. But he didn't try to impress them. You don't have to come from Silicon Valley to be valuable, he told them. You just have to know what problem you're solving, and care enough to solve it right. They loved him. A month later, we launched a scholarship fund in his name, the Langford Initiative. 4 kids from working-class families in the Carolinas, interested in business, trades, or tech. It wasn't just about college. It was about access. We're not just teaching code, I told our board. We're teaching context. We're not just creating analysts. We're building architects of the future. By year's end, our reach had tripled. We were integrating legacy industries into digital ecosystems across 5 states. And my father was at the heart of it all, not just as a figurehead, but as a strategist. A mentor. A living, breathing bridge between what was and what could be. He never once said he was proud. He didn't need to. Every Thursday lunch. Every recommendation letter he wrote for one of our interns. Every time he brought in a small-town contractor and showed them how to streamline their business with our tech, that was his version of saying it. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build into others. The world didn't shift all at once. It rarely does. Change, real change, the kind that matters, moves like water, quietly, persistently. Sometimes you only notice its power when you look back and see what it carved away. 6 months after we launched the Langford Initiative, I got a call from a man named Curtis Bishop. 56. Ran a plumbing company with his 2 sons out of Beaufort. He'd heard about what we were doing. Wanted in. I'm not asking for charity, he said. I'm asking for a fighting chance. I can't keep losing jobs to companies with sleek apps and digital booking systems. My hands know the work, but I don't speak the language of software. He didn't have to. That was the point. We brought Curtis in. Built a customized scheduling tool for his business. Helped him digitize estimates and invoices. Taught his sons how to track analytics without losing the soul of what they did. 3 months later, Curtis landed a regional contract he'd been chasing for years. That same week, he sent a thank you card addressed to both me and my father. It was written in messy cursive, the ink a little smudged. You gave my boys a reason to believe there's still a future in the work I taught them. My father pinned it on the wall beside his desk. Not long after that, I was invited to speak at a conference in Atlanta. Tech executives, Wall Street analysts. The usual. I stood in front of the crowd, polished and rehearsed, and told our story. The algorithm. The $14 million deal. The warehouse we turned into a headquarters. But then I talked about my father. I talked about the man who built something from nothing. I talked about how the world changes, and how we fail if we don't change with it. I ended the speech with a photo of the two of us, standing in front of Horizon's building, our silhouettes cast long by the Charleston sun. This isn't about replacing the old with the new, I said. It's about building a future large enough to hold both. There was a standing ovation. But what stayed with me wasn't the applause. It was the text I got afterward. From my dad. Nice speech. I don't say this enough, but I see you now. Always have. Just took a while to admit it. I stared at the screen for a long time. There it was. No fanfare. No long paragraphs. But it was there. The final brick in a wall we'd been building, separately, then together for decades. We weren't best friends. We still argued. Still fell into old rhythms of silence. But we also laughed more now. Shared stories. Learned from each other. Not as father and son trying to outdo one another, but as men who had finally stopped keeping score. Looking back, I don't regret the struggle. Not the rejection emails. Not the silent dinners. Not even the years we barely spoke. Because all of it led here. To a company that spans generations. To a city that thrives because its past wasn't discarded, but integrated. To a family that learned that love sometimes looks like stubborn silence until it doesn't. I used to think success meant revenge. That showing up in a Ferrari would fix everything. But the truth is, real success didn't look like him clapping for me. It looked like both of us building something worth clapping for. Together.